Welcome to Blackpurl's Accounting Essentials webinar. Today, we're going to be going over all of the key things you need to know about Blackpurl accounting at a summary and essentials level. So that means we are going to be going over the fundamentals of how our accounting integrations work, how transactions flow, how we dictate what goes from Blackpurl over to your accounting application, how the two platforms are going to share duties, and then sufficient time for lots of Q&A. So a couple of quick housekeeping items. If you wouldn't mind muting yourself until it's a question and answer time, that would be fantastic. And then second of all, please get your questions ready. You're welcome to ask any questions that you would like to ask in the chat at any time. I'll be stopping at the end of each section to take questions, and it's worth noting that a few advanced questions, really niche or very situation-specific accounting questions, we may leave some of those on a list to follow up with after the session so that we can keep to everything on our jam-packed and solid agenda. So if you haven't already, please make sure you locate the chat box. I'm going to say testing 1, 2, 3 in the chat, so everyone should see a little chat message pop up, and that's a perfect place to receive links that the customer success team may share during this webinar, and also the perfect place to ask any questions. Before we get started, any questions for me? All right, well, let's jump in. The first thing on our agenda is introductions. My name is Jonathan Aguero. I've been at Blackpurl here for a few years, and one of the things I love most about Blackpurl is how it's making connection really easy. And today, that connection is from the dealership interface, Blackpurl, over to your accounting application, which would either be QuickBooks Online or Xero, which is spelled X-E-R-O. We'll be doing quite a bit of screen sharing today, and we're still seeing some folks joining us today, so I'm letting them in. Welcome to everyone who's just now joining us. We are going to be seeing quite a bit of the Blackpurl application today. First thing that we need to get out of the way, what is the Blackpurl accounting integration? What the Blackpurl accounting integration does is allows Blackpurl, your dealership platform, to push accounting entries and invoices over to your accounting application, which you use to look at things like your balance sheet, accounts receivable, and a profit and loss statement. In other words, Blackpurl's direct integration with the world's top accounting solutions allows you to use a very industry-specific dealership platform and send all of the resultant financial data over to the industry's best cloud-based accounting platforms. So you get to use mainstream solutions for your business that save a lot of time, a lot of manual entry, and allow you to have things like your bank and credit card feeds popping right into your financial accounting. So high level, that's what it is. Blackpurl you use for your inventory and your transactions, financial reporting. Of course, that's going to be in your accounting application. So how does this work? Well, it's an always-on data connection. It's kind of like a hose. If you have a hose and you turn on the spigot, water's going to flow through, unless it's winter time like it is for me here in Colorado, then it's going to flow through every time. That's how the accounting integration is with Blackpurl. Every time you do a parts, service, or sales transaction, as soon as you finalize the checkout, all of your accounting can flow through immediately in real time, like 2 seconds, 5 seconds, over into your accounting application. To get this always-on connection, the first thing that you'll do is to go into your accounting application, the My Accountant menu, and then there will be an option to invite a new accountant. That's what you'll do at the start of your journey with Blackpurl to connect the two systems together. And if you have not already done this, you're joining us today, have not done this, then your activations guide will have more information on this. Another quick point of clarification before we go any further is that your chart of accounts, that's all of the different financial buckets that you've set up to track money through. That chart of accounts is going to live in your accounting application, and then it's going to sync over to Blackpurl, which then uses what you've set up. Then there's a mapping process that tells the dealership interface in Blackpurl exactly what to send over and where to your accounting application. If you don't mind, I'm going to start out with a demonstration, and then after the demonstration, we'll pause for some questions. If I'm in Blackpurl, you see it up on my screen here, and I tap on the cell icon, the cell button up on the top navigation bar. This is going to take me to my simple cell interface that everyone here should be familiar with. I'm going to tap on the parts and accessories tile, and then maybe I use my barcode scanner to add a part in, or maybe I use the part number, as I have done here, to add that part onto my sale. I do all the modifications that I might need to do in Blackpurl, and then I'm ready to hit the checkout button. Everyone should be familiar with this as well. You're going to choose a payment method. I've chosen a simulated card terminal transaction, and then I have a button that pops up giving me the option to finalize my checkout. As soon as I hit that finalize checkout button, that's what triggers the spigot to turn on and all of the accounting and invoicing from that transaction to flow directly over into my QuickBooks Online or into my Xero instance. Now let's follow that all the way through. If I am in my accounting application, I am going to want to click on the Sales button on the left navigation pane, and from there, I might want to select All Sales. This is where I am going to be able to see all of my transactions that are flowing through from Blackpurl. And the top item, sure enough, is the cash sale that we just finalized. So let's take a look at what kind of detail has been pushed through. Again, at a high level, you can see that it's pushed through line item level invoice detail. We see that we've sold a particular part number with this wheel bearing part description. We see a quantity, a rate, and a total. What is great about this aspect of Blackpurl's integration is that every single line item that you sell is going to be reflected in your financials as well as on the dealership side. And if you wanted to check out the journal entries, the cost of goods sold, the inventory, all of these different journal entries that would be made as part of any accounting transaction, I can hit the More button, specifically in QuickBooks Online, to see my transaction journal, and then I can see all of my debits and credits. Now, there's a lot more behind the curtain when it comes to getting your accounting this neat and nice, but this gives you a picture for how those transactions flow through from Blackpurl over into your accounting application. So today, if I went to reports and I went to my profit and loss statement, which of course QuickBooks Online allows me to access from my phone, my tablet, or my computer, I can see accurate dealership numbers, accurate up to about the last 5 seconds. Now, a lot of people here are very familiar, and we're going to dive deeper, but we do want to make sure we cover the fundamentals. So at this juncture, are there any questions about anything I've covered so far? By the way, feel free to raise your hand in Zoom, just speak up, or put your questions into the chat. All right, now let's talk about, there's no questions, so we'll forge on to the next part of the integration. As we peel away the layers of the onion, we get to what really makes the integration with Blackpurl special. Now, the first step in talking about these, how things map, how things move back and forth, is to talk about Blackpurl's Smart Reverse feature. Blackpurl is the only dealership platform in the world that we are aware of that offers you the ability to do what's called a smart reverse. This means we want to undo a transaction that was already sent over to our accounting application. If we are on a transaction that we've just finalized, as we are here, there's a little button that I've circled in green you'll be able to see. And this little button is the undo invoice functionality. If I click that Smart Reverse button, it's going to show me the following screen. It's going to assure me that Blackpurl has checked, are the accounting entries intact and able to be reversed? And is there anything that's happened in Blackpurl that would prevent us from cleanly and safely reopening this transaction? The number of checks this goes through depends on the type of transaction. It's going to check more items if there was a unit sale than if there was just a part sale. In this case, though, you're going to see that it passed the check, and so I can hit the reopen button. The system is going to think for a moment, and then it presents us our parts, in this case, parts sale tile, back to the start, ready to be fixed and resent over. If we're looking on the QuickBooks side, when we go to our sales, we're going to see that that last cash sale for $60 and change is gone. So for anyone who's not aware, that is how the Smart Reverse function works. It's the first of its kind. It goes back in, makes sure everything is safe, and then sucks that information back out of your QuickBooks or your Xero. Works equally well with either system, allowing your team to fix it, recheck out, and finalize the invoice. What we'll see now is as soon as this invoice is refinalized, we go back to our QuickBooks, we hit the refresh button, and lo and behold, this $60.80 transaction is back. So that is how the accounting integration works in a reversal situation. A quick note, quick tip, again, I promise to make this advanced as well as essential. You want to lock down that ability to reopen finalized invoices. You want to lock that down at most operations to your key managers so that there's no changing of transactions weeks after the fact. Another commonly asked question is, if I have finalized my month in, say, QuickBooks Online, can I still reverse it? And the answer is no. If you have purposely closed your month, it won't work. If you have not done so, it will always work if nothing's been tampered with. In the meantime, though, the reason why I brought up the user permissions screen is, folks, you can create in Blackpurl groups of permission sets and then assign your team members to it. So in the case, I don't want my salespeople undoing sales they made previously, there is going to be a really key little permission that you want to turn off for that salesperson group. And it says reopen finalized invoice. So we want to go to settings via the gear icon, permissions, the group in question, and turn off that reopen finalized invoice if you ever wish to limit a particular group of people. Any questions about the reversal functionality? All right, looks like my chat disappeared, but no questions. Let's proceed on. Now, mapping, as you know, your chart of accounts is going to live in very much in your accounting application. The screen you see up in front of you may be a little bit, I'm going to zoom in for those who are on smaller screens, maybe a little bit of what you expect to see, where you can see every single account, what the current balance is, what the bank balance, and of course you can add and remove new accounts. So just a quick reminder that your chart of accounts lives in QuickBooks. Our next question is, how does that information get from Blackpurl over to QuickBooks on a daily basis, or your Xero? Well, the first thing is, if we go into the settings, the accounting settings of Blackpurl, we can see this for ourselves. Everyone's welcome to follow along. If you click on the gear icon, you tap on System Settings, and then you select Accounting Integration. That's where you're going to see the information on your accounting connection. I can see what provider I have connected up. And then as I select the next option on the right-hand navigation pane, I can see the ability to sync my chart of accounts, where Blackpurl goes over to your accounting solution and pulls back any changes. And then you can always hit View Chart of Accounts, right? So these are a couple of key things for any accounting-focused people on this call, probably everyone on this call, frankly. The next step in the mapping is really where the Blackpurl magic comes in. That's what we would call categories. Categories in Blackpurl are a bit some people have heard me use this analogy, like a Google map, a train conductor, a check routing number. It's what tells Blackpurl where to go put the financial information in your accounting application. So every different type of item you may sell has its own assigned category. For instance, used unit sales, new unit sales. If I were to edit one of those mapping categories, I will be able to see where exactly in my chart of accounts the entries will go. So whenever I sell a unit, as you know, there are three key pieces of accounting information that must be recorded. The first one is the income I've recorded from the sale. Where is that going to be recorded? Of course, we can see on this screen that it's going to be recorded on account number 4100, the name of which is BP, New Unit Sales. Good recommendation is generally don't manually change anything in a GL account that starts with BP unless you know what you're doing. You don't want to get in there and start debiting and crediting things, because these accounts that start with BP on your chart of accounts, those are generally going to be the accounts that Blackpurl uses for its automatic action. Next, we're going to see that our cost of goods sold, which records how much did we pay for this income, basically, is going to 5100, new unit cost of goods sold. And then the inventory ledger, where we keep a running total of the total value of our inventory. We obviously need to debit that since it's no longer in our inventory. So this mapping, as you can see, just correlates very directly to the essential accounting entries that would need to be made. And the fact is that if I'm on this webinar right now, I have an accounting function at my operation that uses Blackpurl, and I have any question at all about where transactions might be flowing, I can come in here and see it for myself. That transparency has been praised a lot by CPAs, accountants of all kind, and it's something we're really grateful to be able to offer. The case is that you can have as many categories as you want. So that means if, for example, I am a dealership that sells trailers today. We're going to see all different kinds of dealerships on this webinar. Those who sell heavy equipment, power sports, golf trailer, RV, and beyond. Fact is, we've been hearing more and more folks who are saying, I've got multiple kinds of units that I sell, trailers and go-karts, for instance. Well, I can create a new category. I just hit the new category button. I choose the type of object I'm selling. If it's a serialized unit, I'd choose the type unit. I'd enter a new category name. Let's just say today it's going to be sample category. And then I can choose from my chart of accounts where I'm going to connect this up to. Blackpurl's a bit smart. So if I try to select an account that's already assigned, it's going to give me that error message and say, no, it's already assigned. Once I find the right entries, I just hit save. And then whenever I am creating a new object in Blackpurl, let's just say I'm creating a new part, a new fee, a new stock unit, I can choose that category. So what I selected on my screen is create a new fee. As you can see, fees, being a sellable object, have a category that's assigned. So this category functionality, I'm going over it at a high level, but you may ask yourself, is there any more specific financial information I'd like to see? Do I want to split apart my new and used units? Do I want to split apart my go-karts and trailers? Do I want to create a separate category in my accounting for a specific fee? If you do too much of that, it will clog up your profit and loss statement, your balance sheet. But if you don't have enough specificity, you may not be able to track specific areas of your business as well as you would like. So the categories allows you to customize the chart of accounts to the way you need to see it. And then every sellable object, be it a part, a unit, a fee, is going to have a category that you can choose, and therefore route all of the accounting related to that item wherever you need it. Now, categories is a pretty key concept within the Blackpurl accounting integration. So let's stop to see if there are any questions on the subject of categories, how to apply them, and how to use them to customize your accounting experience. All right, I'm not seeing or hearing any hands or questions. So let's move right along. There is more to the accounting mapping than categories. There are two other key functions. Number one is going to be control accounts. And at Blackpurl, we get a lot of questions about the best ways to understand and work with just the accounting settings. Control accounts, number 3 on your accounting settings page, is going to be a critical one. The way Blackpurl functions is very robust compared to other software solutions aimed at dealerships that are not in new car automotive, right? It's a very robust accounting. A prime example of that is customer deposits. Accounting rules dictate that when you take a deposit on a possible sale, that's not income yet, right? That's a deposit on possible future income. And so with Blackpurl, when you take a deposit on a transaction, it's going to go sit in a holding account, what we would call a clearing account. And in this case, you can see I've had mine mapped to Blackpurl customer deposit clearing account, pretty clearly labeled. That money is going to sit there until that deposit is added to a checkout process. So just to be very clear, when you take a deposit on a sale, and maybe I'll demonstrate that, but when you take a deposit on a sale, that deposit is going to go into this clearing account until you take it out during the checkout process and finalize that transaction. Next, work in progress labor expense. This is one a lot of people are not yet familiar with. This means in Blackpurl, it has really robust cost tracking for labor so that I can understand as a dealer, for every $100 that I charge in labor, what's my actual variable cost there? How much am I paying the technician to get that work done? And therefore, what's my gross profit? Well, when an invoice is simply in progress, Blackpurl needs a place to put the amount of cost that's going to be applied once the invoice is finalized. So this goes over to work in progress labor expense, and then it's automatically taken out when you finalize that service job. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but some of them are fairly self-explanatory, like inventory adjustments. If I do a parts counting function, where does that adjustment go? Cash rounding, inventory accrual. This inventory accrual is the final one I'll talk about today because it's the most misunderstood one, probably in all of Blackpurl. As you may know, in the Blackpurl parts ordering and receiving process, if I go to the order button, I'm going to see part orders, part receivings, and part invoices. With some of the new functionality the product team has come out with, you can now combine receiving and invoicing into one step. But the fact is that if you were just to receive the parts but not finalize the invoice, well, that inventory is going to go over into received inventory accrual until you finalize the invoice, where it takes it out of that clearing account and puts it in as an expense, right? As an accounts payable entry. So if you have any more questions on how the control accounts mapping works, that's the biggest confusion about this, is the biggest source of accounting questions here at Blackpurl. Please feel free to reach out to your customer success rep. Another key operation is understanding where undeposited funds entries are being placed. Blackpurl allows you to map each payment method that you have enabled to a different undeposited funds account if you wanted to. You don't have to do it this way. As you can see, I've got it set up for every payment type to go into the same place. But if you wanted it to go somewhere separate, again, there's more customization with the Blackpurl accounting integration than any that I have ever seen. The final stop on understanding the mapping is going to be transaction type. This gives you a lot of options with your accounting integration. What it does is allows you to define the types of service jobs, the types of part sales, etc., that you want to offer at your operation. For instance, you can see on my list, I have insurance service jobs broken out separately for reporting than warranty service jobs. Some dealerships will combine those into any service job that has a third party paying. It's going to be in the same reporting bucket. Again, very customizable. I can have internal services. I could have layaway parts sales, internet sales versus over the counter, right? Where do you select a transaction type is probably your next question. If I go to the sell button and I were to go to sell parts and accessories, one of the things I can do is if I just start a simple cash sale and I add a part to my order, I'm going to see at the top our transaction type. It's going to be right here circled in green, circled horribly, if I might add. Whenever I go in there, I'm going to be able to select the transaction type. Is this internet sales, layaway, over the counter? And of course, I might choose to add or remove different options depending on the way I do my operation. In this case, it's going to keep all of the reporting separate within Blackpurl based on the transaction type. And now we go down one layer to look at a little more detail. We're going to see that there's a different labor category, possibly, for every different transaction type. So this is a little beyond essentials and basics. So for those of you here who consider yourselves advanced, if you would like to add a new type of transaction, let's imagine a scenario where we just started selling online. I might have my internet sales transaction type go to a totally different parts category and therefore a different bucket on my balance sheet so that I can see, separate from my retail parts, how much I'm making on my profit and loss statement on internet sold parts. This is the magic of different transaction types, is the ability to understand what different transaction types total and analyze them in other ways. I see a question that I'm going to pause to answer for right now. It says, this is a question from Jeff. He writes, does receiving parts through parts invoicing make the entry in QuickBooks? And that's an excellent clarification question. The fact is that ordering parts in Blackpurl, we're always going to use the part ordering button right there, the little icon. When it comes to part receivings, if I do the receiving without invoicing, it will not send over the bill to QuickBooks. If I do the final step, which is invoice reconciliation, then it will go over to QuickBooks as an actual expense. Here's what that would look like. And there may be a follow-up question to this, Jeff, but here's the bottom line. Whenever I am doing vendor receiving and then I reconcile the invoice, it's going to go over as a bill right into my QuickBooks so that my accounts payable team can see it, pay it, mark it paid. This bill object only comes up once the invoice is reconciled. It's not going to come up at just after, let me rephrase, it is not going to come up after a receiving only. Now, as many of you will know, with a recent update in Blackpurl, perhaps I'll actually share this, I have the option when doing a receiving, as you'll see here, you see a receiving up on your screen, I have a little switch that I can flip, and that switch is receiving from an invoice. If I want to combine invoice reconciliation with receiving, that's what I would choose. And it combines it all into one step. And then after you finish, part B of that one step, then it's going to be over here as a bill. If you just did invoicing without that switch and then you never reconciled the invoice by going here, then it will not be a bill. It will be in that clearing account that we talked about, which is going to be, in my case, 10/10/2020, BP received inventory accrual. Hopefully that answers that question, Jeff. Feel free to follow up if you need additional clarification, as I would consider that a Blackpurl essential.
Hey, Jonathan, I got a quick question for you regarding back to the transaction type. I know under part sales how you can identify which category you want it in, but let's say if we have a unit deal, for instance, trailer, is that available as well to have it in a specific category?
Excellent question. Unit categories are available and they work a little bit differently. So unit categories are very much a thing, but the transaction type is only for parts and service. When it comes to the unit sale, if I were to go to the plus button and hit add stock unit, which is a terrible way to add it, but that's why there's a warning. unless you're brand new, normally want to order and receive it in. Whenever you're dealing with the unit, you can choose the category. So here, if I'm just adding it from the quick add menu, I can choose any category. And then whenever I sell that, that category is what's affected. The beauty of this system, Shane and everyone, is that if I were selling, let's just say I set up my chart of accounts in my Blackpurl to track trailer sales separately from mower sales, and I start selling mowers. On one transaction, I'm selling a trailer and a mower. They're on different categories. That one transaction will take care of both categories. So the trailer will go to the trailer one, the mower will go to the mower one. So that's why categories are for units, follow the unit rather than the transaction. If I were to go into unit ordering, let's show this. If I go to the order button and I go to unit orders, I go to a specific vendor, example vendor in our case, and I hit order new unit, then I'm going to see a simple category selection there as well. So whenever my team is pulling my units into the system for the first time, that's the right time to enter the unit category in general.
Now, question about that more so, I wanted to entail is like if I have specific sales that are detailed just to internet only, for instance, I sell a trailer.
Yeah.
Obviously, trailers are going to go into new unit sales there. But if I want to identify if that was a lead that directly came right from our website, for instance, just to be able to track it.
Yeah.
That's something that you guys have available at this moment? Or
great question. Lead attribution is not available through Blackpurl at this time. Shane, as you may know, we do have an integration with the DP360 CRM. Again, davidpaul360crm.com. And they have good lead attribution. So as soon as the salesperson would mark it closed there, that would give you an option. But for anyone who's not using DP360 CRM, Shane, that's an excellent question, an excellent concept. And that sort of function is on our long-term roadmap. There's a chance we can move it forward per some internal conversations, but that's definitely going to be a question that is not fully settled with the product team yet. Just to ensure that that note was taken, I did add it to our meeting notes. Shane, excellent questions. Any follow-up to that before we move on to Kim? All right, thank you again. Kim writes, why does QuickBooks not keep track of payments by vendor? Each vendor seems to zero out. Now, there's a lot to that question. Fact is that any open invoices are going to be tracked in your QuickBooks Online. And any people that you have sold to on account will be tracked as well. So let me demonstrate this functionality at a high level before we get into the detail of this question. If I hit sell, and I am going to sell to a specific customer, let's say it's myself, maybe I use my phone number to pull up their customer record. When I hit skip on the page that invites me to go into any open orders, I start a totally fresh one. Let's just imagine for a second that I am selling that same part I've been using as a sample part, a wheel bearing kit. As soon as I add that on, let's just say I'm selling 7 of them, keep the number funky. So we identify the transaction. When I hit the transaction, as long as I've got a customer attached, and as long as this option is enabled for my dealership, I can choose charge on account, add the payment, and now this is going to go over, as soon as I hit finalize checkout, over to my QuickBooks Online under Jonathan Aguero's account. Now this could be a business, this could be an individual, whatever. The invoice that you would print out of Blackpurl, similar to what you see right here, is going to have the customer's name, and then under the invoice payment section, it's going to show that this was added to their account. Where does it go after that? Well, the answer is it's going to go in under sales. So if I were to go to all sales, I'm going to see as it's refreshed that I've had a transaction to Jonathan Aguero with a balance of $212.80, and the status is due in 30 days. So as you can see, it's pushed it over as a receivable that has not yet been resolved. So the QuickBooks Online and Xero pages are very similar in this regard. They're named different things, but they work almost identically. So if I go over into customers and I were to look up Jonathan, then I'm going to see the record of everything this customer owes me. And if I were to filter by open invoices, this shows me all of the open invoices this person has to pay. It looks like he's been slacking on that $55,000 bill payment. So what I can easily do, quick little bonus tip, is from QuickBooks, I can hit select all and send them an email reminder to the email address on file. And that's going to pop up in my email inbox. And if I have it set up, there's going to be a payment link where I can just pay that right from my email. So that's a pretty cool function you can use. It works fairly similarly on the receivables and payables side. Your question was really about vendors. So I've shown the consumer side of it. The same is very much true for vendors. If there are people whom we owe, then we're going to be able to see exactly in summary or broken down by individual company we owe all of the transactions. So we can absolutely send it through. But again, it is going to only send that in two situations. Number one, when I reconcile the invoice. Number two, once I receive the major unit. Those are the triggers. Receiving a major unit through the ordering screen, it's going to send over a bill and it's going to have it organized by company that we owe. Or when you reconcile that parts invoice, it'll do the same. Taking a moment to look into the chat. Kim has clarified her question. I was talking about vendors. If we were to print a transaction report by vendor for the year, there are no totals. Now, there's a couple of different places that you could find this information. This is one of the, I'll put it this way, the reporting area in Blackpurl is going to be one of my big go-tos for this. I have a section within my common searches where I'm able to see vendor orders, recent vendor invoices, all vendor orders, etc. So once I go to the reports button, I click on reports, I go down to vendor orders, and I can sort all of my invoices by status. So if I wanted to see, any of these by status, I can certainly do that. If I were to go to active receivings, that's going to be related to this. And then finally, if I go to recent vendor invoices, this is going to be one of my critical ways of finding this information. What I can do is I can sort by vendor. So I can easily say, okay, only show me invoices that I have received from example vendor and only show me one that has been created in the past 30 days. And then this report, once I get it the way I like it, I can hit save as, and then I can name it what I like, example vendor, and I can name it invoices past 30 days. And then once I save it, I can add it to my favorites. So as you noticed, I had to go into the main area, but once I save it, after a moment, a star will appear, and then I can hit that star to add it to my favorites. And that's a great way to see all of your vendor invoices from any time in the past. Now, we are nearly to our question and answer section, so I'll need to move fairly quickly over the next few items.
Jonathan,
But a
just to
quick
point
little
out,
note.
we
Oh,
missed
sorry.
a question. We missed a question from Mark,
Oh, excellent.
just
Thanks for
above
bringing that to
Kim's
my.
question. And then I know Colton had one more as well.
Oh, I'm so grateful. Thanks for letting us know, Sarah. Now, guys, to finish out this example vendor invoices report, if I wanted to see a summary, there's a button that you want to make sure you catch. And that button is going to be this little pie chart icon. You see that over in the right-hand corner. That is going to be what instantly summarizes everything on this page. So if I wanted to, Kim's original question, to see what invoices do I owe to a specific vendor, or did I complete to a specific vendor in the past 30 days, and I want to see the total, it's going to be right here. So there are reports in QuickBooks Online that will show you very similar things by vendor. You're also going to be able to see it in Blackpurl. Thanks to Sarah, I am aware that Mark has a question. And Mark Fishman has written, does just the receiving process report the increase in inventory value to QuickBooks? That is an excellent question. So as everyone here knows, when you order parts and then receive them, you've got to include the new value of that inventory in your main ledger. And the answer to Mark's question is yes, it does. When you receive it, it's going to go into inventory. When you reconcile the part invoice, that's when the actual bill gets sent over, to clarify the difference between the two. Excellent question there. And then my suggestion would be, by the way, as a quick follow-up to Kim, if you're still not seeing what you want, if you're still not able to go in and see the summary under the vendor in QuickBooks, it should be syncing. My suggestion would be is if it feels like it's a technical support issue, to chat with support, or if you feel like it's more of a strategic setup issue, to talk with customer success about that. When it comes to Colton Kimmy, he writes, is there any plan at Blackpurl to implement a charge to account system that can be controlled or limited? For example, maximum amount to be charged and lockouts for customers who have not been set up or who have not yet paid out. And that's an excellent question. The fact is, yes, that is a planned control, but it has not yet advanced to the stage where there's a specific estimated time of arrival or an ETA. So with that, I would say that is planned, but not on the roadmap yet. What a lot of customers are doing, if they do a ton of charge on account, they want to make sure they don't allow people who are unworthy. A lot of folks are using the notes section on the customer to do that. So some folks will create a separate price level so that we can see that they're a frequent charger on account. And then we can use the notes section to show things like you're at your credit limit. So until there are formal controls, which is a planned future step, there are some interim measures that you can take. Thanks for the suggestion and the excellent questions. Now, Sarah, is there any question that I might have missed before we jump into the next segment?
I believe we have all of the questions that were written down. Yes, we've answered all of those so far.
Excellent. Okay, now we're going to go to Q&A here in about 2 minutes. But before we do, a quick reminder that it's not just transactions that are selling that go over to QuickBooks. As we demonstrated, it's parts ordering and receiving and reconciliation. It's unit ordering and receiving. And there's one more outside of the deposit function that we already covered that's really critical. And this is parts counting. Probably the majority of operations on this webinar right now keep a parts inventory. And if you do, you're going to want to use the other tools function and then click on parts counting from there. This allows you to choose a full inventory count, a cycle count of just specific vendors or locations, or a random count where we choose what we want to count. Fact is, in Blackpurl, it's really easy to go through your shop and use an iPad, use a laptop to select certain parts, count them, verify that the bin location is correct. Whenever we count them and there's a variance, Blackpurl is going to automatically track that. So as you can see here, I've simulated counting a part that is off from what we expected. When we hit the finalize checkout button, it's going to pull up the dialog for finalizing the session. I have the option of adjusting any parts that are not counted to a zero quantity, just a time saver. Otherwise, I've got to choose where that loss is going to go on my books because I've lost $2,200 worth of inventory. So this is the key thing to remember. Just like everything else we've talked about, part counts are governed by category. So if we jump into the adjustment category, you can see I have two random ones set up. One of them is stock adjustment. One of them is unit transfer. We could have goodwill. We could have a lot of other items. And on this note, it's worth calling out what Sarah LaRose wrote, Sarah with the Blackpurl customer success team wrote. She wrote, there's a free barcode scanning app that can be used to assist with these on your iPad or on your whatever. Reach out to customer success at blackpurl.com for more info. Thank you, Sarah. That's fantastic information. So guys, that's one of the other key things that's going to push across. And finally, before we jump into our extended Q&A, if there are any, then it's important to note very specifically that when it comes to taxes and other items that people have questions about, where is that dividing line between Blackpurl and your accounting app? It's very simple. If you are in Australia, your taxes are going to be handled by your accounting application because Australia has a 10% universal tax. If you're anywhere else, especially where I am in Colorado, my goodness, the taxes are complicated. You are going to need to have Blackpurl handle those taxes. So this is a common question. Where is my tax reports for my taxation authority going to be? Answer is it's going to be in Blackpurl right under tax detail. Other divisions, people ask what program actually generates the accounting entries. The answer, of course, is Blackpurl. So the line, the sort of symbiote, the line between the symbiotic pair that makes up Blackpurl and your accounting app is really Blackpurl's your single source of truth for your inventory, your service jobs, your parts inventory, and your accounting application is really used for three things: actual accounting, accounts receivable, and accounts payable, and your financial reporting. So that's where the line is. A common question we always want to include in the webinar, as so many people have that question. Finally, if you need support for accounting, if it's a technical question, like I think there's an error, I recommend using the chat icon in your Blackpurl to ask support. If you have a question about, should I consider integrating accounting with my Blackpurl for the first time, that would be a perfect question for your customer success manager. In addition, a PSA from our activations team is, if you're about to go live, don't forget to set your opening balances. That is something that the dealership will want to do right when you go live with Blackpurl. You get your Blackpurl all right, all set, and then we give you the values based on everything you've entered to put into QuickBooks, and you got to do that final step of just verifying your opening balances. Apparently there's a few folks who have delayed doing that and had a lot of catch-up work. So quick PSA, if you haven't yet connected the two, make sure you're planning to input your opening balances. And with that, let's head over to a Q&A session. What questions, or this might be a good time to dive deeper into the questions we've gotten from folks like Mark, Kim, and Colton, and Shane.
Hey, Jonathan. Steph here, my bookkeeper's got a question here for you guys.
Hey.
It seems like Blackpurl works on a cash basis and most accounting is accrual. The invoice doesn't come down into your accounting program until it's paid. And you always have accounts, like in accounting, you should have accounts receivable and they don't go down.
Oh, interesting question. So yeah, the cash versus accrual question. Now, there can be different opinions on cash versus accrual accounting. So I always like to bring up a definition. So let's bring up the definition that Business News Daily presents. It says, cash basis lets businesses record income expenses only when cash is actually received or paid. Accrual accounting involves tracking income and expenses as they are incurred, when an invoice is sent or a bill received, instead of when money actually changes hands. So you'll see, according to this definition, Blackpurl is actually an accrual basis accounting platform. We know this and we can see this easily because as soon as we finalize a particular transaction, like like a parts invoice, we haven't paid the invoice, but we've already recorded it as an expense, right? Now, I think there are some nuances to this, some things we could get into. But one thing, when I was talking with our product manager about this question, because it came up rather recently, Blackpurl does not only work on accrual basis as it does on a cash basis, as it does allow you to finalize transactions that are not yet paid. Now, questions, clarifications, I'd love to discuss that one.
I think it's more so on unit deals that the concern comes into place, because especially where everybody in the industry right now can probably contest this, where, well, especially last year, where most product wasn't available in store to purchase. So it had to be on order. So we take a deposit in that case. And then I know deposits get flown out of the account, but I guess that's the issue where it's not necessarily showing, where the trailer may come in and then a customer may take a couple months before they even pick it up. But yet it's not showing on the books that way because obviously we haven't finalized the deal yet.
Oh, gotcha. And so now in this scenario, would the full amount of payment be received at the time of pickup or before?
At the time of pickup. So that's why the kind of issue stands that a trailer sits in the lot for a month or even could be 2 months necessarily there, where a deposit was taken. So obviously the deposit is accounted for, which is fine, but yet the trailer physically is not shown obviously in QuickBooks because the deal has not been finalized because the funds have not been finalized yet.
That is true. Yeah. On a unit deal, depending on what you're doing. Yeah. It doesn't record the transaction at the time of the commitment. It does record it at the time of the funds receipt. So I certainly see where the question came from. On this one, I think it's advanced enough that what we should do is the customer success team will connect with probably our product team, collect a really simple, easy answer to this. What's the best way to address this, cash versus accrual? And then we can send this out to the folks on this webinar. How does that sound?
Yeah, that'd be great. And honestly, that's one of the main reasons why we want to join this webinar today, and also get feedback from other individuals that are obviously doing this. If there's something that we were necessarily not doing correctly or having missing something on that end, just because our books have not been adding up, and with a large amount of volume that we do, it is critical, obviously, with the numbers we're looking at, that we have millions and millions of dollars that are sitting here that are being pushed forward over to our QuickBooks just because of that feature, how the Blackpurl set up right now. So,
oh, that makes a lot of sense. And so, if you had your druthers, what would it look like, out of curiosity?
That basically, as soon as that deposit is made, then the trailer is, let's say, received, for instance. So when you receive the trailer in, at that point, then it could get pushed over to QuickBooks, because the trailer physically is here, because that's an asset. So that way it's shown in QuickBooks that it has arrived. Now in Blackpurl's end, it just shows that there's an outstanding balance that will be paid without being finalized, because right now you have to finalize it to push it forward. So as soon as that unit comes in and received, if it could obviously get moved over right then to QuickBooks, which, Steph, would you agree?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I'm not a bookkeeper. I just
Yeah, 100%.
So.
Hey, thank you, Shane and Steph. It sounds like what you would suggest is a way to, once a unit deal has become a real thing, they've signed for it, they've put their down payment, it's some consideration has exchanged hands, that it be able to be sent over as a finalized transaction before that final payment is received. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Same formality of what you just said with parts, obviously, how you kind of adjusted that recently with parts, but now just with unit deals on actual physical, unit deal for like units itself. So not parts related. So. Yeah,
well, Shane, I know you, of course, personally, and always value your suggestions. This one makes a lot of sense. If anyone on the webinar has a specific strategy to handle that specific item that Shane mentioned, you're more than welcome to speak up, right? This is a community thing. However, as far as our sort of formal recommendation, I'll be back in touch through customer success, so everyone can benefit through that. And then, of course, Shane, you and I can discuss if you'd like.
Perfect.
So this is very good, guys. We have a couple more questions, and I'm okay going 5 more minutes if you guys are. Now, what I've done is on my screen, I've gone to expenses and vendors, and this is where we can see the running total by a particular vendor. So this also applies to Kim's question. So this is the vendor's BRP. I just picked a sample one, and it shows sort of our running total with this vendor. This is going to apply to Mark Fishman's question, which reads, how can a credit from a vendor be entered without having to put it directly against a part? At times, we will receive a credit that cannot be put against a particular part and don't want it to affect inventory or its value. That is another one that I do not have enough time to go into full detail with, about which we will add to our follow-up list. But it is a quick reminder that we can add transactions right here to the vendor record in QuickBooks. I mean, if you don't have any other outstanding bills, we can talk about the best process for that, but a lot of folks will put it against their next bill as well, or a specifically outstanding one. Now, the very next question from Amanda Bering is, after I pay a vendor, usually done on the specific vendor's website, and I see the transaction on QuickBooks, do I then need to match that payment somehow to the appropriate invoice BP has created? I would recommend that you do. The reason why I would recommend that is any bills that have not yet been paid are going to appear under that vendor. And so when you go to pay it, the easiest way to reduce accounting steps, it looks like I don't have my actual direct pay set up here, but you get the idea. I can hit pay right from within QuickBooks. This amount should always match what your vendor says you owe if you've done invoice reconciliation, because that invoice reconciliation process is going to handle any discounts or extra freight charges, anything extra you might have incurred, it's going to be there. So we would advise that whenever you're going to actually pay the vendor, you're coordinating it with this screen right here. Excellent question. And if there's ever discrepancy, of course, you could do an adjustment, but it should, as long as you've got it set up correctly. The taxes would be calculated in Blackpurl, and the amount should always match identically. Now, we have just a few moments left, so I want to respect everyone's time. There were so many good questions here that I know we could talk about for half an hour each more. So we'll do as we promised at the beginning and follow up with each and every one of you. Our final message from customer success is really the following. Thanks for being here. We're going to reach out to you for any questions that are not covered. We're about to come out with our webinar schedule, and we'll be sending out recordings. And then the best way to reach your customer success manager is, of course, their direct contact information. But the second best way to reach them is through the group email address, customersuccess@blackpurl.com. Again, customer success's entire mission is to ensure that when our customers are successful, they grow, they thrive, they love Blackpurl. That's their entire mission. Any other urgent questions before we end 2 minutes early, folks? In absence of extra questions, thank you so much for joining the January Accounting Essentials webinar from Blackpurl, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with every one of you.